Welcome to Sounding Outward, Looking Inward, the case for the contemplative in community music. It's a pleasure to offer you this keynote address today on a most unusual but important topic. My name is Gerard Yun. I'm a native of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California, a second-generation Chinese-American and immigrant to Canada, and a scholar and practitioner of contemplative music practices. I'm speaking to you today from southwestern Ontario, from my home near Wilfrid Laurier University, where I'm an assistant professor in the Faculty of Music and where I teach, research, and practice community music. Welcome. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, on the traditional land held by some of Canada's first peoples, our First Nations, the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the peoples known as the Neutrals. Through treaty, they were promised a large portion of land known as the Haldimand Tract. The land I'm speaking from today is part of that broken promise. The First Peoples are still here. They are our co-workers, students, colleagues, friends, fellow musicians, and more. And we continue to seek justice for them and for the land we have all come to inhabit. See, my people say that we are all one song. We are born of the same spiritual energy. We are created in its image and we carry it within us. As we walk upon the earth, we move with the same eternal rhythm that beats within it, the heartbeat. It comforts and consoles, nurtures and protects us as we form and we learn to listen for that sound in the darkness. Our journey on the planet is to seek reunion with that heartbeat. That's why drums were the first instruments developed by cultures around the world. All of us seek a reconnection to the same eternal spiritual heartbeat. All of us carry that yearning, and we created ceremony and ritual and religions from that ache. So the truth is, we've always been one song. Richard Walgamees, One Drum. Sounding outward, looking inward. The case for the contemplative in community music. Community music is a lot about sounding outward, sounding loudly, and especially sounding together. It's through this sounding with our voices and instruments that we establish our voices in the world and how we help our communities discover their own collective communal voice. We tend to think of community music as an extroverted activity, always outward, always energetic, always intentioned, and always social. But there is another side to communal social musics that lies in the realm of the contemplative. That is, the art of looking inward. This presentation and brief experiential workshop is about the direct experience of looking inward in order to complete our efforts and practices at sounding outward in community music. When we complete this short journey together, you will gain a bit of understanding of this balance between the introverted and extroverted nature of our art, and that you will seriously consider the establishment of your own personal and communal contemplative practice. Before we move on, it's important to define some terms. In academic or philosophical circles, contemplation refers to quiet, introspective thinking, a cognitive exercise primarily, while in spiritual circles, contemplation refers to a kind of inner seeing and makes use of both direct observation and intuition. As you can see on the graphic on the right hand of the screen, current contemplative practices embrace the cognitive, the sensory, the physical, and the reflective. It is possible to engage almost anything with the contemplative mind, the mind of direct experience, of non-judgmental observation, and careful, reflective thought. The act of contemplation, whether it is meditation or contemplative movement or music, is a medium of direct experience. This is very important to our discussion, as experiential learning is at the heart of what we do in community music. In most of the remainder of this presentation, we will be discussing one type of contemplative practice, the phenomena of mindfulness. Now, why are we centering there? Because there's a lot more research carried out on mindfulness practice than any other aspect or practice of contemplation. There are thousands of studies, ranging from effects of mindfulness on aging, school children, bullying, depression, cancer sufferers, loneliness, anxiety, and more. Mindfulness is ubiquitous in our world, and most of us have some experience with the practices around it. Still, there's a great deal of confusion, and I hope to sort a little bit of that out through our work here together. As some of you know, the current phenomenon of mindfulness is a direct outgrowth of a branch of Zen Buddhism that became known as socially engaged Buddhism. Thich Nhat Hanh, seen here with Dr. Martin Luther King, who nominated Hanh for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1967. Hanh coined the term engaged Buddhism, whereby monks and nuns, usually in the monasteries, they left the monasteries to address the suffering and injustices that were happening in the Vietnam War. So this was a direct result of the war. Hanh created the order of interbeing to address the issue of creating a non-religiously tied ethical framework on which to base contemplative practices designed to develop compassion and empathy, and which could benefit a huge range of people, not just Buddhists. He dedicated his entire life to nonviolence as a way towards personal and global peace. Sadly, he passed away on October 6, just last week, a few days ago, as I record these words. Mindfulness meditation was adopted heartily by Westerners from the time of the Vietnam War onwards, but they entered the mainstream via mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, via one of Thich Nhat Hanh's most influential Western students, Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's done a tremendous amount of the research on that particular phenomena and is still considered one of the most influential figures around it. The reaction to mindfulness has been almost entirely, how would I describe, rabid, overly enthusiastic. It is now touted as a benefit to almost every group studied using the contemplative mindfulness techniques, and well-designed research bears this out. There's also some not so well-designed research, which we'll get to. Because of this rather unique reaction to the mindfulness phenomenon, it's very important to point out a few areas that are critical to mindfulness or of mindfulness. There's a panacea approach to mindfulness. In other words, that it cures everything. That has led to the occasional overstating of its capabilities and benefits. In the article Miscommunicating Mindfulness, which is a follow-up letter from a critical evaluation of mindfulness research titled Mind the Hype, which appeared in the Journal of Perspectives on Psychological Science in 2017, 14 researchers warn about the oversimplification of scientific results regarding mindfulness. They cite that the large number of academic, popular, and press articles that manifest direct evidence of oversimplifications. That's a quote. Another quote, academics, including us, are also guilty of such oversimplification on occasion. And another quote, more discussion needs to occur among all concerned parties to ensure that such oversimplifications do not lead to unreasonable expectations. Academics and scientists have an important role to play in this regard. Beyond these scientists who are most concerned with academic rigor and precise methodologies, there are three additional areas that are warning signs for ubiquitous application of mindfulness and other contemplative approaches. One, contemplative methods and practices today are often appropriated from one cultural context and used in a completely other context. Some of these are surprising, with mindfulness becoming a tool for human capital practices, such as making better soldiers on the battlefield or making more profitable salespeople, which are almost entirely antithetical to the original intent of mindfulness, which center around personal and social well-being, cohesion, and pro-social behavior, compassion, and kindness. Two, mindfulness practices are often taken from spiritual, faith-based contexts, where an ethical moral framework is pre-existing and is assumed. This secularizing of mindfulness is what Pusser and Melillo in their 2015 study call instrumental and de-ethicized forms of mindfulness. Authors Hee Jung Min and Joseph Lin, who's Decapitalizing Mindfulness in Education from 2019, look at mindfulness from a critical perspective in an attempt to untangle it from human capital theory, which in schools places mindfulness at the service of student achievement. Our concern with mindfulness is, in fact, part of its original framework and purpose, part of its roots, so to speak. Mindfulness and other contemplative forms intersect with community music in the area of connection. Studies that reveal evidence of pro-social behavior, such as empathy and generosity, as a result of contemplative mindfulness, are in the minority, but for the concerns of community music, they are perhaps the most valuable. For instance, in a 2020 study titled Mindfulness Meditation Activates Altruism, published in Nature, a relatively brief session of mindfulness meditation results in a substantial increase in what a person is willing to give to others in order to benefit them. The results are startling, with those participating in mindfulness exercises showing an increased penchant for cooperation, pro-social behavior, and then a willingness to donate at a rate over 2.5 times more than that of the control group who did not participate at all in the mindfulness sessions. Those who participated in meditation were more likely, much more likely, to participate according to what Marshall Sahlins in Stone Age Economics refers to as a general reciprocity, that is, giving without the thought of receiving in kind. It's significant that a large number of mindfulness studies indicate a clear increase in connection to the natural world, and as a result of meditation and contemplative practices carried out in a natural environment, what one study called nature-enhanced mindfulness. In our current global warming crisis, environmental connection can certainly represent a strong calling to community music and the possibility of nature-enhanced music mindfulness practices. Finally, there's a large number of studies that deal with mindfulness and contemplation in knowing and observing of the self. That is, the significant role mindfulness plays in cultural, immigrant, vocational, health, refugee, and other specific aspects of identity. Again, this is a key area where connection is particularly highlighted in mindfulness and other contemplative practices and could be of great use to us and great concern in community music. Academic studies, articles, books, and professional and expert commentaries and opinions about contemplative practices are important and yield a lot for us to discuss. But the contemplative practices, such as mindfulness, and in our case, music meditation, are mediums of direct experience. So our next step is to immerse you as best we can, given the video medium, in experiencing contemplative music, in music meditation. First, find a grounded, comfortable, seated position, perhaps with your instrument of choice. The music maintains a D-based drone throughout, which may accommodate instruments you have on hand. For now, find your instrument or hum a bit to warm the voice, and take your seat as we start. Find a comfortable sitting position, either on the floor itself, on a pillow or a cushion, or on a standard chair or a stool. Balance your shoulders and head over your hips, elongating the back, and feel balanced over your tailbone. Don't try to stretch and sit straight up stiffly. This is all quite gentle. You may place your hands palm down on your thighs or palm up. You can also nest them one resting on the other, with both hands settled in your lap. Settle mind and body. And as you settle in, begin to notice your breath moving in and out. Inhale and exhale. Just notice. No controlling, no manipulating, no judgment. Just notice. Allow the breath to take up a lot of your awareness, so much so that to calm the chatter of your mind, you can chatter a bit about the breath. In your head, you could say, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. This is a long breath. That was a short breath. Explore the breath and notice gently. And eventually, rather than watching from afar, simply become the breath. I usually help students to do this by telling them to imagine that they are on a surfboard, riding the breath in and out, completely in sync with it and enjoying it. Make sure your awareness is gently riding the breath. Relax any thoughts that are not the breath, neither drawing them in or resisting them, but gently relaxing them and allowing them to fade as each breath ebbs into nothingness. Gently draw your awareness to noticing the music, the sound, and experience it as if for the first time, without judgment, without analysis. As thoughts of the music come, simply relax them, bringing yourself gently back to noticing the sounds and the breath without self-judgment. How gentle are you with yourself? Begin to gently hum along with the sounds, noticing that breath and sound are together. Simply notice. Breath in, humming out, into nothingness, each sound, each breath. Pay careful attention to the end of the sound, the end of the breath, even pausing there for a moment at the end of the exhale. Listening to the quiet before you inhale, slowly, always gently. If and when you feel like it, try this with your instrument, being careful to notice your breath with the sound and the space between inhale, exhale, and sound following each into nothingness, gently, bringing each out of nothingness, gently. Now join breath and sounds together into an undifferentiated awareness so that you don't know which sounds are yours and which are those of others or the recorded track. Simply allow yourself to play in that undifferentiated space of music. As the music naturally winds down, allow yourself to come back to breath and gradually, gently return. You can even say to yourself, open, open, open. Keeping a connection to the sense that you had during this meditation and carrying it into normal consciousness. Thank you for participating with me in that brief exercise. I hope it was interesting for you. In conclusion, I hope I have shown you that contemplative practices such as mindfulness are vital to the practice of community music. They are restorative for us as musicians, artists, scholars, and facilitators, and they work directly in one of our most important areas of concern, connection. We do need more specific research on contemplative practices designed for community music, and we need to be watchful and responsible about overstating the benefits or co-opting these practices for antithetical purposes or non-community purposes. If you are a scholar and practitioner, I'd encourage studying contemplative musical practices from a cultural framework and looking at pro-social behaviors and connections both interculturally and intraculturally. There is also considerable work to be done in the facilitating of contemplative practices directly for community music. Thank you for your time today. Please be safe, stay well, don't forget to meditate, or maybe just hum a bit, and may you find enjoyment in exploring your own contemplative practices. Thank you.